It's a Cardassian holosuite program. An adaptation of one of Shoggoth's Enigma tales.
Is it? I see.
You sound disappointed. I thought you enjoyed mystery novels.
Human mystery novels. The trouble with Cardassian Enigma tales is that they all end the same way. All the suspects are always guilty.
Yes, but the challenge is determining exactly who is guilty of what.
Hey Star Trek readers, welcome to the Treklit Report, where I present a review of a recent Star Trek novel release. In this episode, I'll be talking about Una McCormack's latest Deep Space Nine novel, Enigma Tales. Quick reminder of the format: the first part of this video will be spoiler-free, so you're safe to watch if you haven't yet read Enigma Tales. The second half of the video will be where I get into spoilers about the main story of the book, and I will give you a warning before I do that. In the clip you saw at the beginning of the video, Garak is explaining Cardassian Enigma tales to Dr. Bashir. Dr. Bashir doesn't really appreciate them because all of the characters are always guilty and he finds it somewhat monotonous. But Garak says that the true joy of a Cardassian Enigma tale is in discovering who exactly is guilty of what. It's definitely no mistake that this novel is titled Enigma Tales. Since the end of the Dominion War, Cardassia has faced down a great number of its own demons. Cardassia itself carries a lot of guilt from the years both before and during that war. Like in an Enigma tale, it seems that almost everyone on Cardassia is guilty of something, and this novel explores that society with this idea in mind. At the heart of Enigma Tales is a character that we met in Deep Space Nine's second season, Natima Lang, a teacher working with the dissident movement who opposes Cardassian Central Command and the rule of the military. Lang is seen by many as perhaps that one Cardassian whose hands are clean. She is the only Cardassian in the eyes of many who is free from guilt. However, allegations arise that threaten to tarnish that reputation. Horrific experiments were conducted on half Cardassian, half Bajoran children that are seemingly tied to Lang. Complicating matters is the introduction of Katherine Pulaski and Peter Alden into the story. Pulaski, of course, was the temporary chief medical officer of the Enterprise D in Star Trek The Next Generation's second season, and Peter Alden is a character who has made an appearance in two previous Una McCormack novels, Typhon Pack Brinksmanship and Deep Space Nine The Missing. A former Starfleet Intelligence operative, now retired, Alden accompanies Katherine Pulaski to Cardassia, where Pulaski is set to receive the Distinguished Impact Medal for her work in helping to resolve the Andorian reproductive crisis in previous novels. Complicating matters is the Castellan of the Cardassian Union, the Union's leader, a man that you might know as plain, simple Garak. Dr. Pulaski is immediately suspicious of him, and indeed many of his actions with regards to Natima Lang in this novel seem to be quite suspect. I'm very close to getting into spoilers here, so I'll give you my quick thoughts overall on the novel before I sound the spoiler alarm. I absolutely loved Enigma Tales. The quality of this book was no surprise to me, as I have become a huge fan of Una McCormack's work over the years. She has written a number of incredible novels, most of which involve the character of Garak, or at the very least, the Cardassians in general. Particularly great are Hollow Men, The Never-Ending Sacrifice, and The Fall, The Crimson Shadow. Enigma Tales joins these as a truly great Star Trek novel. The story is surprisingly deep and goes to some very dark places, which I will get into more on the other side of the spoiler warning. Speaking of which, here it is, spoiler warning. Proceed no further if you do not want to have the story of Enigma Tales ruined for you. If you have already read the book, watch on, or if you don't care about spoilers, feel free to watch, but you have been warned. In this novel, a researcher by the name of Elima Antok uncovers evidence of Project Enigma, a program in which Bajoran genes were removed from half Cardassian, half Bajoran children. These children were taken from their families, changed on the genetic level, and then given to new families to be raised as pure Cardassians with no idea of where they came from. These children would never know their true origins, and I have to say, this story affected me in a deeply profound way. Where I live in Canada, we have a dark history that isn't often discussed. The 60s scoop was the name given to a practice of taking Métis children from their mothers at birth. Métis is a French word that refers to people with mixed white and Aboriginal heritage. Now, in many cases, new mothers would be told that their child had died, when in fact it was taken away and given to a new family to raise. This is very recent history in Canada. In fact, the term 60s scoop refers to the 1960s, which gives you an idea of how recent this really was. The fate of the half-Cardassian, half-Bajoran children in Enigma Tales mirrors this horrific history. Now, I don't want you to think that Enigma Tales is all darkness and despair. There's a lot of humor in this novel as well. Dr. Pulaski's frequent missteps on Cardassia, for example, are a lot of fun, and seeing her speak frankly with the Cardassian news media is a real treat. She is a person with absolutely no filter, and I'm sure her appearances on Cardassian news programs speaking her mind were enough to cause ulcers for the Federation brass back home. I count myself among the Star Trek fans who actually really like Pulaski. I didn't warm to her immediately back in the day, watching her during Season 2 of TNG, but upon rewatching that series, I have come to appreciate this character, and Una McCormack has found her voice very well, and she is used to great effect in Enigma Tales, just as she was in McCormack's previous novel, The Missing. Garak's role in this story is an interesting one, and as much as I love the character, I can honestly say he's probably one of my favorite Star Trek characters of all time. I found myself questioning his motives throughout this novel. After all, as we know, Garak is far from innocent. He, perhaps more than the average Cardassian, has a lot of blood on his hands and carries a lot of that guilt that we ascribe to Cardassian society. His ultimate role in the fate of Natima Lang is quite surprising, and it is obvious by the end of the novel that he wants her to succeed him as Castellan of the Cardassian Union. Garak, of course, plays his cards very close to his chest, and his motives are really hard to decipher throughout the book, but by the end, he's redeemed, and you see a lot of what he really believes about Natima's character. The ultimate resolution to Enigma Tales fits the title perfectly. There are indeed a lot of guilty people in this novel, and by the end we do find out who exactly is guilty of what. Peter Alden's arc plays into the resolution in a surprising way. His story is one of redemption, healing, and recovery. I was also surprised at how Enigma Tales played into the situation with Dr. Bashir at the end of David Mack's novel, Section 31 Control. At the end of that novel, Bashir has retreated into a catatonic state, left in the care of his good friend Garak on Cardassia. By the end of Enigma Tales, we get a glimmer of hope that he may one day recover, but it is a very small glimmer of hope. Bruce Gibson and I got the chance to talk about Enigma Tales with the author Una McCormack on the Literary Treks podcast last year, and the topic of David Mack's effect on the story through his novel Control came up during the discussion.
I liked the idea of putting Garak in the role of having to be a healer in some way in return, that it's now a gift that he has to dig into himself and find a way to find the strength and the courage and the resources to spend time with Bashir, who, if people have read Control, they know he's in a catatonic state, and has to find the resources to bring him back out. And Garak has to dig quite deep for that. I think it'd be much easier for him to ignore it, sort of be flippant about it, sort of push it away. But he has to come back and try and bring Bashir back, I think, or somebody has to do it, and Garak's on the spot. So I, in a way, ended up sort of losing my outline, sort of made me dig a bit deeper. And also I got to bring Pulaski in that part and had a lot of fun with her. So yeah, that's sort of where that came from. I got Macked.
You're not the first.
No, I won't be the last, I don't think.
So check out that episode on the Trek.fm network. You can download it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll also have a link to the show page in the description below. So, what did you think of Enigma Tales? Leave your comments below, and I will, as usual, read all of them. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links are all in the description below. Also, check out my book review website at treklit.blogspot.com, where I review Star Trek novels, both old and new. As always, subscribe to this channel for more videos to do with Star Trek books and anything else from the Star Trek universe, and even some stuff that falls into other categories, not just Star Trek. I know, crazy. Until next time, I'll see you in the pages of another great Star Trek novel.